Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel for your second video of the day. This is Chelsea news. Just because the transfer window is closed, no more signings can be made until January. However, players can still sign contracts whenever they bloody well want to. Today we're going to talk about new contracts for big players. We are going to give Mr. Todd Boehly the credit that I think he publicly deserves and talk a little bit about where we go looking ahead to January transfers. Before we get into that though, there was a Chelsea tier list video where I ranked all 8 of the signings we made this summer into 4 different categories. I will leave a link to that in the description. And if you got there from this video, then just let me know that you came from the Chelsea news of the day to the previous video. I want to see how many people actually click through. And make sure you're subscribed to GBFC because we're back in action tomorrow in the Champions League, which means my match preview for the game away in Dynamo Zagreb will be live first thing in the morning before 6 things we learn after the game. It's also an early kickoff, which I am delighted about. But we begin with arguably the biggest signing of them all, in my opinion, and I'll give my reasons for that. Reece James, he's one of our own, that's the song, and he has signed a new deal to keep him at Chelsea for 6, yes, not even one hand can suffice for the number of years that Reece James will remain a Chelsea player to become one of the highest earners at the club. And also, it's a 5-year deal with the possibility and potential to extend by 1. Rhys James has followed up signing that contract with various different posts on his social media, basically just trying to inspire people, which I think is a wonderful thing for a footballer to do, especially a young player who at the age of 22 may have already won the Champions League, the biggest of them all, the Club World Cup, the Super Cup. But I think it's very important for the young players in this Chelsea squad to not only be inspirations internally for fellow academy players who have been there right from the beginning, going through those years where you don't know if you're ever not only going to make it as a footballer, but to then go ahead and make it at your boyhood club. This is the stuff that like serious dreams are made of. You know, when I was a kid, I had a dream to be a footballer, but to even consider being a footballer at Chelsea was, well, maybe I was a bit realistic because I was never that good at football. But for someone like Reece, and another player that we're going to talk about in a moment, for these kind of players to not only have had the same dreams that you might have, or that I might have had, or that many millions of others in the world currently have, to not only do that, but to be able to make it at the club you support, really is the stuff of dreams. I was trying to think of something else a bit less cliche there, but to be quite fair, Reece James is not only, in my opinion, the best right back in the Premier League, but he's also a really, really top guy. We see sometimes he might lose his cool a little bit. There was a time at the weekend where I thought, Reece is people are getting under his skin here and we could see this one go south. But he also represents everything that Chelsea represents to me, which for a team who, over the course of my lifetime, we've grown up looking at Cech, Lampard, Terry, Drogba. Those were the spine, and that is what made the spine of my fandom as a Chelsea fan. When I saw those players, I immediately relate to them. Even now, when I see Lampard in the Everton dugout, I think about Chelsea. And I think Reece James will not only inspire those in Chelsea Football Club, but he is a replica, a perfect role model for all potential footballers of the future. That there really isn't any limit as to what you can do when you really set yourself down to it. And of course, genetics and innate ability too. I'm not going to pretend that it's all some kind of fluffy, rosy story, because it ain't that. But it certainly is for Chelsea fans right now. Reece James has signed a new deal, and it could very soon be followed by Mason Mount as well. Matt Law has said Chelsea to step up Mason Mount contract talks after Reece James signs long-term deal. Now, how does this all relate to Todd Boehly? And why should Todd Boehly be giving credit? Well, the DNA of Chelsea Football Club was altered, changed forever. When Roman Abramovich had the club stripped away from him all those months ago now, it feels a bit like yesterday, but it also feels like such a long time ago now because the club have been through so much since this happened. When Todd Boehly came in, my biggest concern, first of all, that we can now put to bed, was that we weren't going to spend money. We weren't going to see the same level of frugal investment that we saw under Roman Abramovich, which enabled, as much as I don't like to feed fuel into the fire of opposition fans who say, oh, Chelsea were nothing before the oil money came in and you got that dodgy Russian in there. It's not like that. We still won trophies before that, which some people find very unfathomable and difficult to believe. But that was the making of the most successful period in Chelsea history when Roman Abramovich came in. Todd Boehly comes in and he looks at what Chelsea have become. And even though it's still early days, this summer just gone, we can only give so much credit to Todd Boehly, the way that he's come in. And I think if there is any qualms about whether or not we signed the right players, whether or not we got enough players to come through the door, I think what we saw from Boehly is a massive shifting of the DNA, a shifting of the guard from Abramovich, where it's like, you know what, we're not just gonna do everything the same way, this is gonna be done our way. We're not just gonna buy for now with the players and positions that we need, because I think we pretty much did get everything we needed, whether it was the best versions of potential targets or whether it was everything, maybe an extra winger would have been sufficient, but then we also managed to keep hold of Hakim Ziyech. We signed Chukwuemeka, we signed Slonina, and now to see Boehly making sure that the project that he is bringing to Chelsea Football Club to evolve upon Roman Abramovich, not just to be a continuation of what Abramovich built at the club. We're signing young players so that in a few years' time we are ahead of the curve, and instead of going out and having summers every year where we buy 8 to 10 players, we're not going to have to do that with the kind of signings we made this summer, where Chukwuemeka could be a bargain. Slonina, in terms of like trying to get hold of a top-class goalkeeper, could end up being a bargain. And to lock in the Chelsea players like Reece James and Mason Mount, 2 long-term contracts, that is a generational shift in the club's DNA, where people like me 15 years ago will then look at Reece, at Mason, and think that is Chelsea. And if you already don't, then I think we're missing a trick and we're not watching the same club that I am, because Mason Mount and Rhys James have been the cornerstone of the evolution away from that spine of Cech, Terry Lampard, Drogba, the club, and the players that we associate ourselves with, which is why we are the level of fans we are now. And I think these new contracts for these kind of players are massive. And we're not just talking like 2-year extensions here. We're talking about 6-year deals that will see them spend the majority of their career at Chelsea Football Club. We know that signing a contract doesn't mean players will leave, but with players like Reece and Mason, whose dream it was to play for Chelsea, having already done what they've done at Chelsea, I think it is so important that we lock these guys down. And I think when we look forward to the future, these contracts being signed by Reece James and soon Mason Mount hopefully as well, I think we'll look at this as a big watershed moment in what in 10 years' time we'll look back on as a brilliant start to a different era at the club. We move into reports from Nizar Kinsella. Chelsea owners make midfield signings a priority in the January transfer window, with heavy spending to continue. To me, this is brilliant because, yes, I said it earlier in today's video, and I've also said it earlier in this video, that the signings we've made this summer are not only proof that Boehly isn't messing about, he's not coming here just to milk it with shirt sales and up in ticket prices. We're here to keep investing in the squad to continue to build on Abramovich's Chelsea success. So when we look at this news now, when we look forward to January, what we're looking at here is Jorginho and Kante and the fact that their contracts expire next year. So with this being said, Chelsea are not going to hold fire on this one. Jorginho, we know that he's always flirted with a move back to Italy. With Kante, there was interest at the end of this summer from PSG, and they were monitoring and still are monitoring N'Golo Kante's situation with maybe signing a new deal. If I were to make a prediction on this one, I think maybe one of them will stay at the club. And I think the fact that Jorginho apparently was offered a deal, but it's just not been signed yet. I think if anyone's going to stay, it would be N'Golo Kante. But I think fitness-wise, Chelsea might be more reluctant to give Kante something he really wants. And maybe Jorginho, depending on which Italian clubs are interested in, maybe Jorginho would be the one to sign. But in terms of January, Edson Alvarez from Ajax, the man that we missed out on deadline day, he is Chelsea's top target, supposedly, in January. I've watched a little bit more of Alvarez for Ajax since all of that news dropped at the end of the window. I think he's a top player. And again, I think Chelsea will significantly have an eye going forward on a Jude Bellingham or a Declan Rice, two players that have been long admired by the club. We obviously know the story with Declan Rice and how people have tried to push this one into Chelsea's direction. I think this summer, if West Ham weren't so adamant on that stupendously high fee, I think we might have seen Declan Rice at Chelsea Football Club. Speaking more about player exits that didn't happen, which I'm very happy about, Kepa Arrizabalaga. Tuchel was talking about Kepa in the press conference for the Dynamo Zagreb. I've not actually watched the press conference yet, I'll have to see it, but I'm looking here from Fabrizio Romano. Both Kepa and Chelsea looked at the interest from Napoli and other clubs this summer, and both parties decided it wasn't the right move. Now, I firmly believe Kepa has to start against Dynamo Zagreb. I think Mendy has been out of form to a level that is nowhere near the level that we saw when we won the Champions League. Kepa staying, Tuchel's comments, I think Kepa starts, and I think it is one of those where as long as he keeps playing well, he deserves a run in the team right now. Kepa's still at Chelsea. He didn't force a move out of the club. He's happy, even though he wants to be playing. Every player wants to play. Kepa's not just happy to sit on the bench, but he wants to fight. And I think now he's got an opportunity. And the final piece of news that I want to talk about in this video is Arsen Zakharyen. He is, I believe, 18 or 19 years old, plays for Dynamo Moscow in the Russian league. And if it wasn't for issues right now between Russia and virtually everybody in the world, Zakharyen would have become a Chelsea player in the transfer window. Fabrizio Romano specifically asked the man himself, what is happening? Zakharyen came out and said that there was an offer from Chelsea, and it was an offer he could not personally refuse, and it's unfortunate that things were not able to go through. Now, I think Zakharyen will also go into the Chukwuemeka, Slanina type category, and I do think if we can get the logistics and paperwork and everything done with this deal, then I think Zakharyen will be one of the signings this January. Very exciting player. Again, don't watch a lot of Russian football, but do your classic Football Manager, do your classic YouTube search, and you'll see this guy's a bit of a baller. But anyway, if you did enjoy this news video today, and the credit that deserves to go right now to Todd Boehly at this point in time, please hit the like button on this video, subscribe to GBFC if you are new and haven't already done so. Come on, you Blues.